Oh, it'll take a day to you, this day of your time. How are you all? All right. All right, thank you. Once again, we thank each and every one of you and all of you together collectively for the co-creation of this interaction and the allowance of this transmission this day of your time. We will begin this transmission titled, "You Are All Time Travelers," in the following way. First, a brief reminder of some things we have talked about regarding what time is. Time, remember, is a side effect of your consciousness shifting over and over and over and over and over and over again to different points of view of the same single moment of existence and making it appear to be different moments. You can use the analogy we have used before that these different moments are themselves parallel realities that can be illustrated as frames, if you wish, on a film strip. So each frame is its own reality, but it has no movement in it, no experience in it. In a sense, no awareness in it, no self-reflectivity in it. Each frame is a single snapshot, a static snapshot of a potential position, a potential state of being, so to speak. Therefore, when you move, when you shift your perspective, your consciousness, through the different frames, one after another, as you say, like a projector light through a film strip, you get the illusion of continuity, the illusion of movement, the illusion that creates the experience of time and space and change and growth and difference. Now, if you will, look at the top page of your handouts where you see all the different squares, one group, the A group, another group, the B group, and each has an arrow moving through it from left to right. In the A group, you see that all the squares represent different frames, different parallel realities that your consciousness will shift through to create the illusion of time. You shift through these parallel realities, these frames, billions of times per second, literally, to create that smooth illusion of physical reality in time and space. Blinking through them so quickly, you don't even realize that you're actually shifting from one reality to another that many times per second, but you are. Now, in the top example, the arrow appears to be going relatively straight from left to right. This is usually how your consciousness sort of perceives the idea, as a smooth continuity, one moment after the next, one progression after the next, one step after the next, in some sort of logical, continuous way or experience. Now, it can be, in a sense, that way. The frames could line up that way next to one another. However, more likely and more often, more commonly, the picture is actually more like Group B. You're actually jumping all over the place into different frame moments as you determine for yourself what the next experiential frame ought to be that serves you best for whatever your belief system has to be or happens to be at that moment. Therefore, even though you may actually be jumping around, so to speak, now again, remember, this is an illusion even unto itself, because everything is actually here and now. All the frames are here and now. They're not really spread out like this. This is just the easiest way to simplify the concept in your three-dimensional reality. Fourth dimensional when you include the concept of time as you move through the frames, so to speak. But it is more like the idea of skipping around all over the place. Now, The point is you may not actually know you're doing that because it will still feel like Group A, like the arrow in Group A. It will still feel like you're just moving straight ahead, frame after frame, stepping stone after stepping stone in a logical, continuous progression with none of this jumping around. However, as you start to expand your consciousness, as your senses become more aware that you're creating the illusion of time and space, you may begin to experience what we will call breaking continuity. And breaking continuity can be experienced more often than not like suddenly things are happening in a more accelerated way. You don't necessarily experience what normally would have been the in-between moments. It's kind of the result of a how did I get here moment? How did that happen moment? There wasn't enough time for me to get to this place, but I got here anyway moment. Those kinds of slippages of space and time that allow you to experience a break in continuity is the result of your consciousness becoming more aware of the fact of Group B. You're jumping around all over the place all the time anyway. So becoming more aware of that fact can actually allow you to perceive that you're jumping around like that all over the place and actually create the sensation of a break in continuity so that time and space start skipping around, or you start skipping around within it in ways you couldn't imagine would be possible before. You can accelerate things, slow things down, take detours, and perceive them as you do them. Now, this is the basic framework that is happening with regard to what we're going to discuss about time travel and how you use this in various ways. So, you may turn to the second page, if you will, of your handout. Looks like a lot more fun there, doesn't it? Anyone flashing back to their schoolwork days? Oh, what do I have to memorize now? You have to memorize nothing. Just follow along. Whether you understand all of this, whether it all sinks in right now or not, is not the point. We will walk you through it. You will absorb whatever you need to absorb at this particular moment, but it's really not that difficult. Understanding again the basic premise that there are many different kinds of frame moments, parallel reality framework moments that you move through in your own way that create your sensation of moving through time and space. So at the top, you see simply the basic layout, the idea that as you move through life and you go from being a baby to being a child to being a teen to being an adult to being a senior, these just represent major frame moments within the entire spectrum of your life, and the rows below them represent the same moments in your life. So, the idea is that time travel, in the way that your science fiction stories portray it, is not really the way it works. It is all about the idea of shifting to parallel realities that may be very, very similar to your own, and so you might not immediately be able to tell the difference that you actually haven't traveled in your own timeline, but I'm telling you that you haven't. And example number one gives you the perfect illustration of why that doesn't happen. If you look at the idea of, again, the symbol at the top, you go from the idea of the baby to the child to the teen to the adult to the senior. Then look at the first row of the second example, example A, and you go, all right, this person in the top row is a baby, and then they become a child and a teen, but as an adult, suddenly, they invent time travel, and they decide, I'm going to go back and I'm going to see myself as a child, a younger version of myself. Now, you would think, as most of your sci-fi stories propose to you, that you're actually going back to your childhood. You're not, in the sense that you recognize yourself as being an adult traveling back in time to meet a younger version of yourself. That's very different than what you experienced as a child, not having met an older version of yourself. That frame when you went through your childhood. Those frames are those frames. And if in those frames you never met an older version of yourself coming back and saying, "Hi, I'm your future self," then you can't change those frames. Those frames are fixed. They are those frames. The frame that just has you in it as a child and not your future self. So when you do then have the experience of traveling back in time, quote unquote, and actually running into your younger self and introducing yourself as the future self, that's taking place in a parallel reality where in that reality, that child met you. Not even from that child's timeline, but from another parallel timeline. But now you've become part of that child's timeline history. And now that's child 2, that's timeline 2, as you can see by the numbers in that example. And as you then interact with that child and that child grows up, that child still grows up as child 2. Now, when you decide, all right, well, I'm going to go back to my own time when I left, you can't do that exactly either. Because look at the diagram where it shows that the adult in the top row has left to go back to meet the child self in the other reality. That frame doesn't include you anymore. It's blank, and it always will be. You can't go back to that moment. You can't go back to that reality. So when you decide to get in your time machine and again, quote unquote, go back to the future, you will find that you will be in a different parallel reality again. You will be the senior of that reality because now you've changed your own experience of history by meeting your childlike self, which didn't happen in the primary timeline. So you're skipping all over the place, becoming another version, in a sense, shifting your consciousness to become another version in another parallel reality of yourself. Now, look at the next example, the idea that says actual time travel rather than parallel reality time travel. If you actually, literally, went back in time in your own timeline, you wouldn't meet your child self, you would be your child self. Because your consciousness exists all the way up and down the timeline already. So the idea of literally traveling back in time in your own timeline means you simply experience yourself literally as the child again and are right in that moment where the child has no idea what it's going to grow up to be. You are literally that child and nothing else at that moment. It's almost like creating a loop where you're living it over again. That's what actually would happen in time travel, is you would not know you had time traveled. You would simply find yourself being the child exactly the way you did experience being the child, and you would have no idea you're going to grow up and invent a time machine. It would just be you experiencing yourself as the child. Now, at the bottom, you have a similar idea, but the dotted line means you're not actually physically traveling back in time. It's just that you're allowing your consciousness to, in a sense, slide back down the timeline and experience the idea of the child, but this is simply what you call a memory. That's what memory is. You're actually allowing your consciousness to slide up and down the timeline, but only your consciousness, and you are experiencing the idea of remembering what it was like to be the child in that moment, and sort of reliving that experience, but you're not actually committing fully to having time traveled down your timeline to be the child. You are simply allowing yourself to continue to remember that you are the adult having this experience of remembering that childhood moment. You are time traveling in your timeline, but only with your consciousness, not with your physical self. And that kind of time traveling you call a memory. Doing that kind of time traveling in the opposite direction, in what you call the future, is what you call the idea of being psychic and predicting the future. In a sense, again, there are still the engagement of all the different parallel realities, so on and so forth. There's all these probabilities. You don't necessarily know which one will be the absolute one that you will experience, but nevertheless, you can perhaps be sensitive enough to figure out the probabilities of what might happen and maybe move in that direction as you keep shifting through these parallel frames of existence. Is this making some sense so far? Yes. All right. If you do have questions or require clarifications about any of this, certainly you may do so if you have been called up for questions a little bit later. But right now, this is the fundamental idea and the fundamental understanding that lays the foundation for the concept that we are discussing this day of your time. Now, how do you start navigating these frames in a more conscious way to your advantage? How do you become an expert time traveler? This always goes back to the formula that we've given you. Now that you have a better understanding, or at the very least a diagram that your brain can relate to, now that it can actually see some form of layout, some presentation of how this works, and it can relate to those images, the idea of acting on your passion to the best you can with no insistence or assumption as to what the outcome is supposed to look like is actually your navigation tool. It will automatically guide you through the frames that are most representative of the path of least resistance, the path through these frames that is actually best for you. Go back to page 1. Look at diagram B, where the arrow seems to be jumping all over the place on its route through those frames. Now, as you really start aligning more with your passion, following that formula, allowing the tools in the kit of excitement to work to your advantage, and choosing to remain in a positive state, no matter what happens, responding to it in a positive way so that you can get the benefit from it, no matter how it looks, that will start to determine exactly what that path looks like. And every single time you make any alteration whatsoever in the belief systems within you, even the slightest alteration, the slightest change, that arrow that is jumping all over the place will completely change its form. And you will be skipping through it in a different path. The next change, skipping through it in a different path. The next change, skipping through it in a different path, all the way through. Why? Because as we have told you, every single change you make actually changes your past as well as your future. You're always in the present. So it's not like you're going to go, all right, well, the path starts out here, then goes there, then goes there, then goes there. Well, I'm going to make a change here, and so it might be different from that point forward. No, it will also be different from that point backward, because as you become a different person, from the linear framework point of view, you have to create a different history that brought you to the point of being the person you say you are now. That's how it works in physical reality. You have to have the continuity of having the past that works to make you the person you say you are in the present. Making sense? So the entire arrow, the entire path changes. So the idea is, again, you can navigate this more consciously. You can start experiencing more breaks in continuity, experiencing more flexibility, malleability, plasticity in space and time. Things can start happening much more synchronistically, much more magically. When you allow yourself to truly align more strongly with your passion, act on it, to ground it, to commit to it through your physical action, that demonstrates the energy, that creates the energy, that radiates the frequency, that acts as your rudder through these frames, through these parallel realities. And that will continue to determine exactly what path you are taking, so that you will always only then be experiencing the frames that are always to your best benefit, to your advantage, always representative of the path of least resistance, always representative of the path of connection to all things that are relevant to you in your life, always giving you exactly what you need, supporting you in that way, and always allowing you the freedom to choose to be who you prefer to be. That's how it works. Does this make some sense to you? All right. So let all of this just sort of simmer. Let it all sink in. The handout is yours to ponder at any time. You may have other insights that may come up just by the planting of this seed, but please understand, you are all already time travelers. This is your nature. You're not learning to do something you don't already do. This is for the purpose of helping you to become aware, more conscious of what you're already doing, so that you can utilize it to your advantage in a more conscious way, so that you can begin to truly expand your senses and become more sensitive to the changes that take place in your experience of reality, and learn to recognize when major shifts are actually occurring that are breaking your continuity, so that you can leap for joy at the quantum leap you have just made. In a sense, it can actually feel like, not that you're doing this literally, but can actually feel like you are skipping over frames. So the idea then is you will feel accelerated. You will feel, again, that there is very little resistance. Your challenges will all be exciting and expanding. You will grow from them, and you will be living the birthright that you deserve to live. So use this tool to your advantage. It is a powerful recognition to understand how reality works. When you can truly see the structure of existence and understand that you can use it to your advantage this way, many things will become very clear, and many questions that you may have had will be easy for you to answer. Yes? Yes. Yes. So we thank you for allowing us to share this tidbit of timely information. And we ask now, in what way may we continue to be of service to you? Please begin your questions and dialogues if you wish.
Good evening.